Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can. Thanks, Madeline.
Okay, great. We'll just wait a minute just to get everybody on and we can get started. Okay, good morning, everybody. It's just after the hour, and we have our regulatory forum for May. I'd like to thank the organizers. Yeah, just a few reflections. Thank you for joining us all this morning. The voice you're hearing is Madeline Pierce. I'm the chair of the SAMED Regulatory Committee. Just want to check again, can you actually hear me?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Good, great. Thank you very much. All right, so we're progressing through the year and it's been a lot of activity. I just want to remind everybody about the SAMED AGM on the 18th next week. We are going to be in the presence of Dr. Matibe from SAPRA, so that is something to take note of. And this morning we are joined by radiation control members, so that's really fantastic. Radiation control is an important part of our regulator. So just some formalities before we start. Obviously, because we are a collection of competitors, we need to make sure that we are not meeting around conflicts of interest and in violation of competition law. The competition law do's and don'ts are outlined for you. If you want to know more, you can always ask. But you do need to safeguard against any anti-competitive discussion. So, just bear that in mind while we are talking with our regulator and amongst ourselves. We are also recording the session. And so that means that by joining us this morning, you are consenting. So if you object to being recorded, then you can't be part of this meeting, unfortunately. We do welcome questions, and in fact, that's part of the, advantage of a regulatory forum is that it is an opportunity to put your questions to the speakers. We would like to either have them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and you can open your mic when we call on you. It's always nice to hear other people's questions because often that triggers questions in your own mind and then you can ask them. So let's have some good discussion. All right, so for this morning, we have radiation control in the form of Mr. Kolbe Ditsepu, who is a medical physicist from radiation control. As many of you know, ionization radiation is used in our industry under many circumstances and in different applications. Electronic generators, some radioactive materials, and obviously the government has to do something to control the use of these because they are potentially hazardous. So radiation control is governed by SAPRA, and that body regulates all activities involving electronic generators of ionizing radiation as well as radioactive sources outside of nuclear fuel. So this is a separate discussion from nuclear energy, but it also has a similar source and materials that are involved. So we want to look at all the roles and responsibilities of radiation control from their point of view, the legislation that's applicable to the medtech sector, and the list of medtech product groups and types that are subject to radiation control, the requirements of the law, and the people that we can contact at Radiation Control. So I'd like to introduce Kolbe Ditsepu. Kolbe, are you on the line? Let me just check before I introduce you.
Yes,
Yes,
I'm
you
here.
are.
Thank you.
All right. And am I saying your name correct?
That's correct. Yeah, no, you're saying it perfect.
Oh, good. Kobe is the Deputy Manager for Radiation Devices Management. As I mentioned, he's a medical physicist with some extensive experience, and he can provide pertinent information on the licensing process of non-ionizing radiation medical devices, underlining various radiation medical devices, and he's the ideal person for us to talk to this morning. So we really are grateful that you were able to make the time for us. We have a group of interested industry members on the line, and I would like to hand over to you, and don't forget to put your questions in the chat. Over to you, Kolbe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, the colleagues, our stakeholders. This is something at the heart of SAPRA, particularly Program 5, under Dr. Mative, to regularly engage with our stakeholders so we can make life easier between ourselves. I just want to mention that I am here together with my colleagues who will help us with probably technical questions later on the questions and answer session. I would like to introduce them as well, or just say their names. I see Natalie Igugar is here. I haven't confirmed if Johan Ace, if you're online, please indicate. Thank you. Sydney, are you also online? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, if I may share my presentation. Thank you so much. Yes, already said, my name is Colbert Ditsepu. I am a deputy manager in radiation management devices, popularly known or also known as a non-ionizing and radiation devices subdivision of radiation control under Program 5 here at SAPRA. This will be the overview of my presentation, which I will share with you. What is SAPRA? What are the functions of SAPRA as a regulatory body? The radiation control division of SAPRA of yesterday, where it was and where it is today. And what are we also planning for future? And also take you through the website, which we are trying to encourage the stakeholders to interact with more often, because the most of questions are there or answers are there. And questions and answer session, we can help each other on technical issues relating to specifications around applications of various licenses. Thank you. To start with, the history of SAPRA, it was established in 2018 as a Schedule 3A entity of the National Department of Health. And in 2018, there was a new board appointed to look after SAPRA. And as many of you are aware, SAPRA have taken over the MCC, which was also under the National Department of Health. And it has taken all the entity, including the human resource, finance management, the accommodation, and SAPRA took over all the responsibilities that MCC used to look after. And SAPRA also took over new responsibilities in that year in the fields of medical device, in vitro diagnostics, and radiation control, which used to be the separate directorate within Department of Health. These are the things that SAPRA is responsible for the regulations of health products intended for human use, both in medical and non-medical. That's in the regulation of health product intended for animal use as well. The licensing of manufacturers, wholesalers, distributors of medicines, licensing of medical devices, radiation emitting medical devices, radioactive nuclides, licensing of radioactive materials for clinical trials also. And what is our vision, our mission and values? We are agile, responsive African health product regulator, globally recognized as an enabler of access to the safe, effective and quality health products in South Africa. We also want to promote access to health products and protect human and animal health through the science-based regulatory decisions with the values of Ubuntu, responsiveness, integrity, transparency, efficiency, and excellence. SAPRA objectives are monitoring, evaluation, regulation, investigation, inspection, registration and control of medicines, registration of clinical trials, registration of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics, and registration of scheduled medicines. And these are the legislation that SAPRA is mandated to look after. The National Health Act of 61 of 2003, a Medicine-Related Substance Act 101 of 1965 as amended, and Hazardous Substances Act number 15 of 1973, which is what radiation control in the main utilize. To focus on radiation control, on the Hazardous Substance Act 15 of 1973 for both Group 3 and Group 5 hazardous substances, the subunits that are responsible to look after the Hazardous Substances Act within radiation control are radionuclides, which is responsible for Group 4, and it regulates Group 4 hazardous substances together with the conditions and the codes of the practices. And the regulations that are related to that subunit is Regulation 247 of February 1993 for both sealed and unsealed radiation sources. And for group 3 ionizing radiation, we've got regulation concerning the control of electronic products, the conditions pertaining to that and the codes of practice, and Regulation 1332 of August 1973. It's what we utilize for control of these devices. And under non-ionizing radiation, which are also Group 3, we've got Regulation 690 of April 1989. We also have the Schedule of Listed Electronic Products, Regulation 1302. The organizational structure at the moment within SAPRA, as indicated, SAPRA is Section 3A organization reporting to Minister of Health. They do have a board, and that board, of course, looks after the organization through the Chief Executive Officer. We also have a board secretary and the various committees also within the board. And as a Section 3A organization, we do have the Chief Financial Officer, the Chief Operating Officer, the Head of Legal Services, the Head of Human Resources as well, and also the Chief Regulatory Officer. I'll focus on the Chief Regulatory Officer who looks after the operations of the organization relating to the mandate or the acts that we are mandated to look after. And there she looks after, or he looks after the program in health products and authorization, clinical and pharmaceutical evaluations, inspectorate and regulatory compliance, medical devices, and radiation control division. The functions of SAPRA are divided into five programs. The first program 1, it's administration. Program 2 is the health product authorization. Program 3 is inspectorate and regulatory compliance. We also have program 4, which looks after the medicine evaluation and registration. And program 5 for medical devices and radiation control, that's where we are located. And when you are trying to navigate our website, look anything that is related to program 5 under medical devices and radiation control, that's where you'll find us. And to speak about radiation control fit for purpose structured organogram, as you know, we are a relatively new organization, so we're trying to structure ourselves in a manner that we'll able to look after all of our stakeholders or cover all of the services. At the moment, radiation control, we report to our manager, and under that office, there is also group admin. And each of the subunit, the radionuclides, they've got a deputy managers who look after each of those. At the moment, the large subunit is inspection subunits, and that is under Mr. Phineas Matlangu. And the attempt there is to try to expand the unit so it can look after all necessary regulatory services for all subunits. Up to now, I think the focus has been in the main into ionizing radiation to do all inspections relating to the licenses or that are required to ensure the safety of both human and animal use. But we are intending to expand the services to also in non-ionizing radiation in the near future. As indicated already, the subunits for radiation control currently are X-ray licensing unit, radionuclides unit as well, and the radiation devices management units, NIRMET, which I am responsible for. And inspectorate subunits, it touches in all other subunits, but as indicated, I'm sure you might have interacted, or some of your clients might have interacted with the colleagues from inspectorate subunits, which touches in all of our subunits with regard to both compliance and inspections. Functions of radiation control for all of our subunits, as you might be aware, the first subunits in the X-ray, we look for ionizing radiation in there. Those are the kind of devices we're looking after. And in radionuclides, they look after the radiation sources. In the NIRMET, we look after the non-ionizing devices. And in all of those units is for both medical and non-medical. Inspectorate, as I said, they cover all of the subunits where it's necessary to perform inspections. And as you might be aware, they perform inspections either pre-licensing or after, or if there is a prompt inspections that are needed due to either radiation incident or anything that might require our attention. For group 3, at the moment, we are covering medical, industrial, and research. And this will be the typical devices which the unit will be the unit looks after under Group 3 Hazardous Substances Act. For medical, you will have a typical cath lab devices, a portable fluoroscopy, the CM, a CT scanner, and mammography units. We've got a lot of those that are listed for both imports and the use license. And for industrial things like package inspection units, we look after those. For research, as things such as spectrometer for laboratories, we also do give license for both imports and the use for research. Also, the diaphragmeter for laboratories, we also look after those. We've got quite a few of those licenses under us. And for radio nuclides, the typical equipment will be SPECT camera for unsealed sources, which might either be used for diagnostic purposes or therapy purposes, and in diagnostic purposes for either in vitro or in vivo, or in therapy in vivo as well. Things such as the iodine 131 sources are also covered in there. Some of you might be involved in those spaces. For sealed sources in radionuclide space, we license things like high dose radiation machines, like in a case of brachytherapy unit. For iridium 192 sources, we cover that. We also cover for sealed sources equipment such as gamma knife, which they use the cobalt sources. And we also do cover equipment such as the cyber knife for therapy purposes. For also therapy purposes, we cover things such as the external beam radiotherapy LINAC. We do license those for both imports and use. And we also license in the case of the therapy, but for radionuclides, the iodine 125 for prostate procedures. And for group 4, also for nuclear medicine counting systems, we also cover the Europrobe used for radio-guided surgery. And also we do cover for well counters and also the thyroid probe, which are used in the nuclear medicine procedures. And what are we planning for future? As you might be aware, there are no fees that are charged for regulatory services that are covered under radiation control at the moment. And SAPRA is looking at that. And I think the intentions are in the very near future, they will start interacting with stakeholders formally for proposed fees with intentions to obviously implement sooner than later to try to cover the cost of the current regulatory services for hazardous substances. We're also hoping, and there is a software which is being looked after to have the online license applications where we can make life easier for our applicants or dealers, and we don't have to exchange emails and get sometimes the documents get lost. We're intending to have a software where the applications can be loaded online, and we can deal with the whole applications online. You get notifications and able to retrieve your licenses when successful. I think many of the guidelines have been revised at the moment, and there are also new ones that are being put together, but that's a part of the project which the team has been engaged on from last year. And many are at the moment published online. I think there's one at the moment which is published for your comments. We'll have a look at it where it's located later on the website. The inspection or inspectorate division has, I think, for the last 2 years or over a year, have expanded tremendously, and the intentions are to try to cover as much inspections as possible to ensure that the license conditions and all the requirements are adhered to, and we limit the radiation incidents from anywhere where they could come from. And part of what we're intending to do is the submission of the quality control. That's in the case of the use licenses. But generally, the intentions are to try to get our license holders to do submissions either annually or periodically to ensure that the adherence to the conditions and the requirements are still maintained. Just to indicate what has been happening within the team and some of the incidents that I get reported to. This was the incident apparently of the source, which was found in a metal scrapped space and was reported to us, and we had to go and visit these people to do inspections and check if there are any hazardous substances around these metals that they've got from everywhere, and sometimes they're a little bit out of our control because our license holders don't always report the sources when they are no longer in use or they are not intending to use them anymore. So that's where you get to be informed of unintended sources found in the metal spaces or in places that are not controlled. And we had to visit them and look after these places. I think in one incident when I joined early last year, there was a report of the German ports officers found one of the sources which originated from our side. And then we had to do all the necessary radiation control measures to try to get it back to South Africa, which was not easy at all. We encourage the license holders that they need to embark on a correct processes to get the sources or any equipments that need to be disposed after they've reached their either lifespan or their half-lives, or they are no longer intending to use them, so that we can dispose them correctly for public safety. Yes, we go through lots of risk. I know that at the moment we are trying to make sure that we've got sufficient resources to ensure that we cover everything, but we get a lot of incidents, from the illegal equipments coming into the country to unqualified people using the equipments, either in a hospital environment. Maybe some specialists found that their colleagues who are not qualified, or at least HPCSA, it's not allowing them to practice in certain spaces. They use equipment to do that job, whether it's in dental space or in general medicine in the hospitals, and those are things that get reported to us daily, and we take risk and jump into those spaces to try to sort them out. We can go through the SAPRA website to show each other where we found the contacts of the people and various subunits. But I think before we do that, let's probably go through the questions and answer sessions and see where we can help you. I know the presentation was very general, wasn't going through specifics. So I was trying to answer the list of questions which were indicated to me, but we are here with the colleagues to answer any questions relating to of course, in the main, non-ionizing radiation, but we can also do our best to answer you on any other thing related to radiation control.
Thank you. I just have a question here from Nadia Alexander. She's asking, kindly confirm whether the ECG medical devices also need to be registered with the SAPRA Radiation Control Unit, and if a person or company who services ECGs need to register as well.
Yeah, let me, yes, they need to be registered, but I think to be technically correct, Johan, do you want to take that one?
Yes, electrocardiographs are listed electronic devices, single channel, multi-channel, and they need to be, as it's stated here, registered. We say according to the Act, licensed. And then your next question about the people that service it, no, it's all about the licensing for importation or manufacturing. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Johan.
Yes, just to add, so at the moment, the equipment such as those which might be regarded as less riskier based on our regulation 1302 are only regulated for imports, as Johan said, or manufacturing as well. It has come to our attention as well that there might be unauthorized people who are utilizing those some of those equipments, including ECGs, while they are not allowed to, based on their code of practice. And we are trying to deal with that either through a communication or some kind of inspections. As you might be aware, ECGs might be found at every corner of the healthcare facilities. So going forward, the intentions are to work with HPCSA to try to deal with that, and we are unhappy with that. And there are a lot of similar cases where people who are not allowed, they are utilizing certain equipments.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. We have also have a question from Marianne Berger. Please confirm the registration of dialysis equipment, which are not related to radiation procedures. Does anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, colleagues, Johan or Sydney?
Yes, that's indeed a licensable product. In fact, it's listed under Section 813 of the Regulation 1302. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Ndleka has asked a question which I think a lot of us are wondering. The SAPRA medical device regulations will allow registration of products that do not have CE mark, as long as they have one of the other reference country approvals. You're aware of that, right? And then in radiation control, they do insist on CE mark only for ionizing products. How will radiation control harmonize regulations with SAPRA medical devices to be consistent? So the industry is kind of struggling with the two-tier regulation, and we're finding inconsistencies there. So I'd love to hear your comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very thorny issue, in fact, even within SAPRA. But we are basically looking at that requirement to revive or review our requirements and see how we can able to harmonize the equipments that are under radiation control going forward. I think it's sufficient to say that at this stage here, but at the moment, yes, only CE mark is allowed or approved on our side. But we are in fact in the process of reviewing those requirements and to see, without compromising our Hazardous Act, ensure that the safety of the public at all times is maintained. We are looking at all those to see if there are any other assessment bodies around the world which can also be allowed on.
So if I can just add to that discussion, Colbert.
Yeah.
You're aware that the new European medical device regulation has caused a number of delays because of the complexity of what they tried to implement in Europe. That means that a lot of EC certificates under the new medical device regulation, well, put it this way, the medical device directive certificates are now expiring. And there is no ability to get, or they're not getting to the new EU MDR license or certificates. So across the world, people who rely on the CE mark in terms of regulators are having to make concessions for extensions of some of these MDD certificates. And I was just wondering if radiation control has taken that into account, because you simply cannot get certificates through the system. And this is across multiple companies, multiple types of products. So
Yes.
I don't know if that's come across your desk.
Yes, no, it has. It has. Hence, I'm saying it's a thorny issue at the moment. I think we are also looking at that angle to probably have some concessions regarding the expiry date, to see if we can have some grace period, depending on what's happening on that side. It is within the team now. We are discussed. I'm sure the communication will come to the industry very soon, to indicate how long or how far we're going to take it with regard to expiry dates on the certificates. But we haven't come to the final decision yet. We are indeed discussing.
All right, excellent. I definitely wanted that to be, drawn to your attention. So we have a question from Margriet. She says, do you have regulations regarding the monitoring of radiation exposure of sales reps in theatre? So that's radiation exposure monitoring regulation.
Yeah,
for sales.
that's interesting one, because I mean, the monitoring of the radiation, first of all, or unless if Natalie want to come in, I'm thinking about the occupational side of it, but also for the public as well, which we are not necessarily having. Generally, I think there's no a monitoring approach, as those people are not at all times being at the risk of being exposed or around the radiation units. And Natalie, I don't know if you are able to contribute to this question, maybe.
Yes, I can certainly.
Thank you.
The regulation speaks directly to provision of monitoring of radiation workers. So those would be your occupationally exposed people. Your members of the public and sales reps would fall into the category when we look at our dose limits. They would fall into the rate provided for the limit rather, for the public. But I suppose in a practical situation, nothing would stop the sales reps from applying through the monitoring services, the SABS, and Netcare, for them to carry their monitoring devices. Then they can be aware of the dose that they are receiving. I think there is more fear if you don't have a number that you can attach to the actual dose that you are receiving. But the monitoring, specifically the Act compels us to look at the people in the hospitals, in the theatres only. There's no legislation for anybody outside of that category.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you.
Thanks. I hope that answered your question. Okay, for medical device field workers who are exposed to radiation in hospitals, what is the current legal requirements from an employer? Is issuing radiation monitoring dosimeters enough? So quite a similar question, but I think it's more directed to the service people, perhaps. What are the current legal requirements from an employer, and are dosimeters sufficient? I don't know if you want to take it, Natalie.
Yes, I can try and assist. The Act specifically again speaks to just monitoring, and that monitoring may take various forms in terms of your TLDs or your pocket dosimeters that are required for the pregnant radiographers. I am not sure when enough is enough, or when someone will consider enough to be enough. Because like I said, there's various ways for you to monitor. But the Act specifically just says monitoring. It doesn't go into detail in terms of how that monitoring should be done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Khadija has got an interesting question. The declared electronics products, group 3, in the regulations haven't really been updated since June 1991, resulting in confusion in industry as to which products become applicable and resulting in various guidance, advice coming from SAPRA. So there's a bit of confusion. Yeah, how do we navigate this to clarify?
Yeah, to come in there, at the moment, I think as we took over many of the managers early last year, it has come to our attention that many of the documents do require a review. I think the Act itself do require review. So while we are not at the moment have initiated or started any review of our regulations, we trying to complete the guidelines which have to deal with which we thought was immediate, and immediately after that we'll definitely have to start reviewing some of these regulations. And I do agree it's long overdue and is causing confusion. But if I'm correct, Johan, Signy, and Natalie, we are also issuing what is called non-licensable to any other devices which might not be listed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we also just working with regulations. We can't work outside the regulations. So those listed products, the so-called listed products that you mentioned, is what we work with, and that list includes not just radiation, as with the previous question on the dialysis machines that indicated that it's not a radiation procedure. I just like to include that it's not always just to do with ionizing or non-ionizing radiation. There's a so-called list of medium and high-risk devices that include incubators, ECGs, ventilators, and so on. And that's a list that we work with, and that's from the regulations. And we just have to work according to that. And until that is amended, and it will take some time to amend regulations. That's just how it is at this stage. Maybe, Colbert, we can also include that this dual list system where we license in terms of our Act from 1973, and then also the Medicines and Related Substances Act, where the devices unit register of medical device establishment. So you maybe there's a confusion in that sense too, that there's two acts. And we actually physically, one is sitting in Bellville, in the Cape Town area, and other in Pretoria, where our head office is. And so you're going to have a system where you have a license issued for a ventilator in terms of one act, and then on in the same also for the establishment registration. So yeah, and then I just want to include with in terms of previous question on the MDR that as Colbert said, we are aware of the extension of this MDR transition timelines, and that's recently that was extended, I think, in a EU Act of 20 March this year, because they probably noticed that the notified bodies won't have a capacity to do all the MDR requirements, and then also a lot of the manufacturers are not yet prepared, and then they're also worried about the shortages of medical devices. So at least that helped us that this timelines will be or were extended until 2027, 2028, depending on the classification of the device. But it's true that the certificates that were currently issued under the Medical Device Directive will expire or has expired, but that will still be seen as valid. And I think that's probably the route that we will also go forward to. But then we will just be adding probably, and it's not yet made public, is in terms of the declarations from manufacturers, and maybe also letters from notified bodies that certificates or that they did apply to do auditing in terms of a medical device regulations. I'm just answering a previous question on that. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Johanna. I have
Sure.
obviously Ndleka did a follow-up comment, but I think it's not covered, Ndleka. Please excuse the background noise. So the extension, according to Ndleka, has not been applied by SAPRA, but I'm hearing that you know about it and that it will be taken into consideration. So I see Dr. Mark Bodley saying, do engineering companies or service centers, not manufacturers, servicing, for example, X-ray machines, medical devices, need to have a SAPRA license?
No, no, I think if they are just doing the service, generally there won't be any need for them to have a license for anything because they are not either going to be using the equipments for clinical usage or being them bringing it into the country. Yeah, I could be wrong, but Natalie, I'm thinking now in a case of the inspection bodies.
Yes, Mr. Colbert. You are on the right track, but specifically not the engineering companies that that does the safety. And again, the Act is the Act and regulations is our guide, and we focus on occupational workers. But I understand the risk. It's a hazardous substance. That's what the Act calls it. But nothing prevents these companies, if they are concerned about the safety of their workers, to, for instance, apply for a monitoring service for a couple of months so that they can get an indication of the type of exposure that they could potentially be getting, because these machines are quite safe if they are in enclosures, but obviously if it's opened up and it needs to be tested, the risk is different. But yes, they can apply to the SABS and look at having themselves monitored just so that they can have that peace of mind for themselves.
Or any approved dosimetry service.
Dosimetry
and I think,
service. Yes,
yes,
correct.
I think it's a good practice for any other service company that do installations or any, because part of the testing will be exposing either test what do you call it, the test equipments or anything. They need to, I think, monitor themselves of any other radiation exposures. Yeah.
Thank you, Natalie. And Nomonde was asking about confirming the name of the Act, which speaks about radiation monitoring for exposed workers. And I see you did answer, so thank you for that. It's in the chat for those of you who want to take note of that.
Thank you.
So that is at the end of the questions that are in the chat. Does anybody want to raise their hand at this point, or shall we go into looking at the website navigation, Colbert? Anyone?
If there's anyone.
No, there's nobody raising their hand. So let's go ahead, since we have just a few minutes left.
Thank you so much. So in our website, as reflected on your screen now, this is the page you're gonna be landing at, and the tab that you'll be probably interested at is the tab on operational units, and in that you'll find all the units, including radiation control, and that's where you can click. And you've got various options within the radiation control. You can either go open up the various sections of it, including the acts and regulations. But I think where you want to go is under various pages here, where our acts are located, applications, reports and forms, guidelines and codes, frequently asked questions for all of the sub-units, and also inspection bodies who are involved in that space. You also have the pages for all of our sub-units here. And the communication page also to industry. So that's where the letters and other quick communication will be uploaded. radiation control news and updates. And on the communication to industry, you'll also find the let's say the guidelines which requires your comments. And also this page normally will have the same content as the communication page because it's intended for that as well, and the quick updates of things that are happening at SAPRA. Maybe where we should start is the key contacts, because I think that's probably where you will want to know who to speak to within SAPRA. Under the key contacts, they are the two main people listed here is our senior manager, Dr. Dimakatso Matibe, and all of her contacts, including her email address, is here. Our manager as well for radiation control, Ms. Komoto Henrietta Klapi, and also her cell phone numbers, the tel, and also email address is listed here. So you will see all subunits and their deputy managers. And to start with, it's an X-ray licensing unit. The deputy manager there is Mr. Mkondi Simapope. He's got his contacts also there listed, and there is an email address. So if you've got anything else related to X-ray or anything ionizing, you can send him an email. For radionuclides, you've got Nico Ace listed there. There's no cell phone number, but his email address is there, just to indicate. Some of you might be aware the radionuclide subunits at the moment. The acting manager is Andrew Esau. The website has not been updated yet because he's acting. So the intention was to get someone permanently on that post, and I think HR and together with managers responsible are engaged to try to get the post filled permanently. So as soon as that is done, there will be new contact details there. Inspectorate, the deputy manager there is Mr. Phineas Matlangu, and that's his contacts. And you also have a sub-regions under inspectorate subdivision, and each of those two have their assistant managers. Pretoria is Esther Matavani. The contact details are there. In Cape Town is Mr. Malcolm April, and they are the details. And you've got Miss Chetty. I must also indicate that Ms. Chetty has recently gone on retirement. So this post is also in the process of being filled up or new person appointed. And as soon as that is done, there will be new details listed here. But for any other inspectorate or inspection related matter, please contact the deputy manager for that subunits, Mr. Phineas Matlangu. I'm sure he will be able to help or at least direct you to the nearest person in your region. For non-ionizing radiation, that's myself, and my email address is there, cell phone number as well. So you can contact us if anything related to non-ionizing. As you might be aware, we're dealing mainly with the imports, which I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are dealing with that. So you can contact us if there's any queries. And general inquiries, we've got email address, which is managed under under Mr. Ditoles Pamore. So you can contact or send the email address there, which our managers will also have access to that. And it can be attended to as well very quickly if you send it to there. So we're trying to have as much contact as we can with our stakeholders. And the next page, my apologies. I started from the bottom because I thought the contact details will be very important. So under this page, that's where you will see any update news which we'll publish under this page. If there are any communication letters or urgent updates we need to communicate to the industry, we'll publish there. And those communications you will also find under the communication to industry. So at the moment, there is this import and operating a licensed dental X-ray letter which has been published. So many of you please interact with that letter. We're trying as much as we can to control things. We are not covering everything as we would like at the moment, but the letter, I think, had to deal with the illegal movements of the dental machines in the country. And for frequently asked questions for each of the subunits, so you can engage with each page there, the X-ray, Inspectorate, NIRMET, and radionuclides. So going to those pages, you will see questions which we are getting very frequently from the stakeholders, and we're trying as well to update those questions as much as we can to make life easier between ourselves. Thank you. And you then move to each subunit, and this is the NIRMET and the summary of what NIRMET deals with. And this, our common emails to contact us as well. Sometimes you send emails to individuals and they might not get responded to, maybe due to leave or any other reason. You are welcome to send into these emails. The application one is nirmet.applications@sapra.org.za. And the inquiry one, nirmet.inquiry@sapra.org.za. So you are welcome to send us an email, and many of our colleagues will see those emails or queries as they come in.
So, Colbert, while
Yes.
you're just navigating, there's a question from Sabelo saying,
No
are there
problem.
any plans to integrate the radiation control application process and registrations with the upcoming SAPRA product registration for medical devices? So that kind of duplication of regulation, is that going to be integrated?
And no, not at the moment. Saying that in future that might be the case, but the team that is responsible for that unit at the moment, they will only cover the medical devices, not radiation control related devices. I think that's a very good question. In fact, I think the future is pushing us to go to that direction, given many queries and emails we're getting from industry and confusion that sometimes the two divisions might be causing. But we haven't looked at it. But I think there is acknowledgement whenever we interact with Dr. Matiu and other colleagues that we need to find a way of appearing as a one thing into the public. And I'm sure that in future that's what it's going to be looked at. But at the moment, no, there are no such plans.
Right. Okay, please continue. We have a few minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, radionuclides, the contact details of relevant people and their common emails are there. There are just few updates that are needed. Some of the colleagues have now retired. Inspectorate has indicated they are the contact emails there for various regional offices and the responsible managers. And the X-ray, similarly, they've got their common emails. You can contact them in there. And also the responsible managers and some of the people within the team. And this page is, I mean, they do repeat themselves, of course, but this will be the frequently asked questions, inspection bodies list. I didn't mean to download that. My apologies. The guidelines, you can go there, and also for the listed. For these two listed subunits, the other subunits have not uploaded yet. You can go there and you will see the guidelines for their units. The application forms for various subunits, for X-ray, for radionuclides, and non-ionizing. You can also go there. You will see their stuff, and also all the acts and regulations. You can also download the ones that are of interest for you. I think that's the end of our.
All right.
Yes, I mean, obviously other tabs are covering the many other programs of SAPRA, and if they are of your interest, you can also check them. What I meant was in the subunits, you've got all the other programs that are within SAPRA. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning to all of you from Radiation Control. We are most appreciative of the information shared and your willingness to answer questions. I hope, guys, that you got something out of it. And I'd just like to again thank the team from Radiation Control. That's Colbert, Johan, Sydney, Natalie, and I hope I haven't left anybody else out. The other thing is, please do remember before we ring off to register for the AGM next week. This is a SAMED matter, Colbert, but that was just a heads up to the people listening. But again, thank you very much for your input, and I can call this meeting to a close. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.